Well, the news came out yesterday that the Zags are on the upcoming cover of Sports Illustrated, which we want to talk about today. First, though, Steve, I just want to give you a compliment on your outfit.
Thank you, man. Thank you. You're not looking too bad yourself. I think it just goes to show, man. We're, 4 months into this now, 3 months in, and we're just getting better and better, and we're clearly so in sync. We didn't even have to text each other this morning. It just kind of happens.
Yeah, Upper Left Sports has hit the point that we now have, uniforms per se.
That's right.
That's how dialed in we are. But let's talk about that Zags cover. And I'll tell you what, the Zags have been on Sports Illustrated many times before. In fact, 9 total. A lot of times that's been like the March Madness preview where you've got a lot of different dudes from college basketball. I remember the first one I really remember was when Morrison and J.J. Redick split the Sports Illustrated cover. But this one feels a little bit different because it's the team and, it's a focus on the program.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those where you've said it yourself, man. We've had a number of different players. You think Kelly Olynyk as well had a cover with the Kennel Club on there. But to just focus purely on the team and Mark Few really shows how far this program has come. And, I mean, the article itself, man, it's just there's so much growth that Gonzaga has seen. And I think the fact that we've seen a lot of these other elite schools struggle this year, and Gonzaga has not fallen into that trap. They seem to get better and better each year. And this is just kind of a tip of the cap to them. And I think the first of many solo Gonzaga covers we're going to see.
Well, I have to call it out because when I saw the cover, the first thing that stood out to me is there was a noticeable omission, and that was Anton Watson.
Yeah.
You have the Zags starting 4 of 5 on the cover with Mark Few. And here's what I want to know. I want to know how it went down. Was it he wasn't photographed, which I think would be the better of the two?
I hope.
Or did Anton Watson have his photo taken by Sports Illustrated, call up his friends and family, say, hey, guys, I'm going to be on the cover of SI, and then it came out yesterday and Anton's sitting there going, dude, what happened? I want to know which of those two things happened. Who knows what happened. I do feel for Anton not getting the love that maybe.
That would be a cold-blooded editing move.
Oh, yeah. I
hope it's not that.
Love he deserves. But
absolutely.
What a lot of people are now starting to talk about, Zags fans and non-Zags fans as well. You got the Sports Illustrated curse. I don't think that people really consider that a thing, to be honest with you. I think the Madden curse people talk about. Real. 100% real. But one thing that I thought was interesting is that Sports Illustrated had fun with this actually back in 2002. They ran an article, the front of Sports Illustrated was a black cat, and they talked about the Sports Illustrated curse, and out of the 2,500 covers SI had run, 913 featured a person or team who suffered some verifiable misfortune that conformed to their definition. So either the team was undefeated and lost, the player had a terrible game, someone got injured. That's the whole Sports Illustrated curse. Obviously, it's something that isn't real, but we know that if for some reason this team stumbles, whether it be in the next week or an early March Madness departure, people are going to talk about it.
Yeah, it'll get brought up. I mean, I think people have fun with those curses, right? I mean, especially the Madden curse. Everyone knows it. People generally have fun with them. But when it comes to Gonzaga in particular, I mean, let's just call a spade here. If anything happens and gives the masses a reason, they will jump on Gonzaga. We've seen it year after year. Mark Few talks about it in this article. Everybody knows it. The masses are looking for a reason to, jump on that kind of clowning Gonzaga, if you will, and say they were right and all this nonsense. So it'll be out there, but, hopefully, barring some catastrophic injury, pretty low chances here.
Well, let's get into the article a little bit. It was very well written.
Very good article.
Few things that we definitely learned from this article that we want to go over, but the article basically starts with the end of last year, which we've talked about many times on this show. And really what they dive into is, I love how they say, gone were the Cinderella days. It's funny they start the article that way, yet it says on the cover of the issue, if you think Gonzaga's a Cinderella, think again. Like, we all know that.
Yeah.
Super low-hanging fruit. But they talk about how gone are the days of, the Cinderella upstart Gone are the early NCAA, early departures from the tournament. And they get into how the only thing at this point that Gonzaga is missing is a national title. It's the elephant in the room. And that last year's team, and I think that if they win the title this year, it'll quickly be forgotten. But as long as the Zags don't have a national title, I think it's going to be very easily forgotten how last year's team very easily could have. And they addressed this. This was a team that arguably up there with Kansas could have been the number 1 overall seed. Killian Tilly was looking like he had recovered and was going to be healthy.
Finally healthy, yeah.
And they do a really good job early on in this article just talking about where this team was heading into March last year, which we all know never happened.
Yeah, and that was just such a heartbreaker. And obviously that team, at the start of the season, I don't think anybody expected that. Even in the article, Mark Few says that team outperformed their expectations like no other team had for him. Anybody knew Gonzaga was probably going to be a top 25 team last year, but start of the season, if you had taken a poll, were they going to be a number 1 seed and hold a number 1 ranking?
No one
probably
saw
not. No, nobody saw that. Nobody knew what you were getting in Ryan Woolridge. Obviously you can look at his film and his tape and say this is a good, solid basketball player, but you don't necessarily know he's going to come in and shoot 42, 43% from 3, be one of the best defensive point guards in college. So there were just so many surprising factors on that team, and it really came together. And to see that get taken away, it was one of the many casualties of 2020 and the COVID pandemic. Heartbreaking for some of those guys. You think Killian Tilly, finally healthy, gets that last shot. Admon Gilder and Ryan Woolridge had both never played in an NCAA tournament. They make the transfer to come to Gonzaga, have a chance to be that number 1 seed, play in Spokane, and have it all taken away, man. It was just brutal. And, the article breaks that down. It breaks down Few's conversation to the team and how hard that was. And, you hate to see that, but for Gonzaga, they just continue to reload. And now you look ahead, and it's like they're even better this year. How's that happen, man?
Yeah, they talk about, that now infamous meeting that Few had to have with the players. He said it was the toughest moment in his entire coaching career, having to sit down and let those guys know that everything they worked towards to this point wasn't going to happen, especially, those transfers who moved across the country to come up to Gonzaga to make the NCAA tournament. And, how we had to remind the guys that obviously the pandemic was a lot bigger than basketball. But there's something I want to get into a little bit here that very early on in this article stood out to me, and the article very much went in this direction, and I think kind of let a light into the program in a way most people don't know. And when they're talking about last year's team, they talk about how this team could shoot, they could pass, they had experience, they had a surefire Hall of Fame coach, an international pipeline, and a performance staff that focused on mental health.
Yeah.
And I believe that there's been a light shed on a member of this Gonzaga family that most people don't even know who that is. And also just a change in culture and a change in focus that was really taking this Gonzaga program over the hump.
Yeah, you really love to see that. And, reading that part of the article was very enlightening. And I think it just goes to show how much really goes into the seasons and these programs, how much they're really going in depth here. And Travis Knight is the staff member that you're referring to. If you haven't been maybe a Gonzaga Twitter follower or just deep into Gonzaga, you probably don't know about him. Travis Knight really burst onto the scene with the Kelly Olynyk transformation. He worked with him throughout his redshirt year, completely transformed Kelly's body, transformed his game, his footwork, everything. I mean, just tremendously got better. And at first it was like, is this a one-off? And then you saw a number of guys come through and complete a redshirt year, and it's not a one-off. Every player that has gone through the Gonzaga redshirt program has gotten tremendously better. We've seen that all over the place. And it's a large credit to Travis Knight. He is what they call their performance guru. But, for me, even I like to think I know a lot about Gonzaga basketball. I've been aware of Travis Knight for a long time. I didn't realize that he was also kind of the forefront of that mental growth side of the game. Yeah. And that's what this article talks about. After the Wichita loss that was a second round, that was just a rough year. I mean, they skated by the 16 seed Southern and then, of course, lose to Wichita. Gary Bell broke his hand, I believe it was, in that game. And after that game, they really realized that they had to focus on the mental side. They had players, but they had to be able to lock in and bring it on the mental side of the basketball. And that's where Travis Knight, again, came in to help this program. He's focused on that. And we've obviously seen such a huge change in the demeanor of this team. You can tell this team no longer feels like, they're the Cinderella or they're going for the upset. This team now, for the last, number of years, these teams have known what they are, and they come out and they look like that. They come out with confidence now. They don't get rattled when teams make their run, which is inevitable in March Madness games. And he's just been such a huge piece of this program, man. It's great to see him get some praise in this article.
And it wasn't just a mention. It really went deep into it. He was mentioned numerous times. And I think one of the major takeaways from this article was in a year that the traditional Bluebloods in Duke, North Carolina, go on, aren't in the front of college basketball, they're kind of talking about how Gonzaga is the new blue blood. And it sounds so simple from an organizational perspective, but they really get into the team bonding, the things that they're doing off the court to get these guys to play together. And it is the mental side of the game that sounds so simple, but there are so many programs that aren't doing it. You look at Kentucky's had many teams that, Cal's been able to get guys to come together, but there have been some very talented Kentucky Wildcat teams that they just never quite gel. And you can have all the talent in the world, but it starts with recruiting. It starts with finding guys who want to play team basketball, guys who are willing to put the name on the front of the jersey ahead of the name on the back. The fact that they've been able to find a guy like Jalen Suggs, who is a potential number 1 overall pick in the draft, but still has that mindset. It starts with recruiting so that they know when this guy steps on campus, they're going to fit that mold. So let's dive in a little bit deeper to some other parts of the story that I find very interesting. They go into this year's team, and as I'm starting to read, this article, where my mind goes is, God, could you imagine if the Zags won it last year? Now, we might be sitting here going like, dynasty, could they win back-to-back, which is a big deal in college basketball.
Absolutely.
But kind of where they go with the article is saying that as good as last year's team was and how this team last year had just as good a chance of any team to win the national title, how all of a sudden it seems like in a blink of an eye, we fast forward 1 year, and now, this team has the best chance. And it's a totally different squad. We know that, but they've done some things so far this season that we've never seen before.
Yeah, this team is it's so good, man. And you see Adam Morrison talk about it. You see Few talk about it. We're not alone in that. We put out our top 5 video, our all-time starting top 5 lineup, a while back. And we had a couple people say maybe there's some recency bias in there. And, hey, I get it. There was a lot of recent players on our team, but it just goes to show the progress that this program has made. And, like I said, we're not alone in that. Jalen Suggs is a top 5 pick in this draft, no doubt. And back to what you said, getting a guy like him that fits this program so well, embodies all the values of this program, it really just goes to show this is why Gonzaga keeps growing. You don't see them throwing their hat in the ring with every top 30 recruit and hoping to land 5. That's not what they do. They find, 2 or 3 guys in every class that fit what they want to do, and they put all their chips in that. And you know what? Some people might say it is a little bit of a risky recruiting style, because if you miss, that's a huge chunk of your plan gone. But it is exactly why that, while these other teams that you mentioned are having down years, Gonzaga continues to grow. They continue to get better. And it looks like we're still at the beginning of this, which is just crazy to say.
Well, here's the quote from Morrison, who, let's not forget, went 3rd in the 2006 NBA draft. He described a player of Suggs' caliber as a level beyond all of them. And when he said all of them in context, what he meant was players like himself, players who went before Suggs in this program. This is Adam Morrison saying, no, like Suggs is on a whole different level than guys like me, Dick Al, guys who went before him were. And I felt like that was a pretty cool part.
Absolutely.
Another, tidbit that we learned on Jalen Suggs is that he was going to go play college football. And he was going to go play for Ryan Day up at Ohio State, and that it wasn't until a heart-to-heart conversation with his dad, we'll never know what was said, that changed his mind to play basketball. And so I think that's a very interesting thing. We play the drinking game of, did you know that Jalen Suggs played football? Mm-hmm. Maybe we didn't understand.
We're starting that now. It's early, man. This is early in the morning.
Maybe we didn't understand how close that really was to happening.
Yeah.
So really interesting tidbit there. We got a quote from Anton Watson, who left Gonzaga to go to Minnesota, who basically said that we continue to think like, okay, this team, this program has hit their ceiling, and that we just got to get past the point that maybe there isn't a ceiling with this Gonzaga program. We did a video not too long ago of, is Gonzaga basketball the Alabama of college football? And they made a comparison in here that I thought was really good, that said, no, that it's Notre Dame football. It's the only thing you can quantify it to. And the guy who wrote the article actually asked Morrison, Few, about that comparison. Mike Roth, athletic director, none of them disagreed. And the reason why is you've got a small Jesuit school, not a big, student body, not in some huge metropolitan area, who has done something for such a long period of time. You say it feels like this is just the beginning. And I'll tell you what, if the Zags can stay on another 20-year streak at the same level, if not better than they've been on, this is the Notre Dame football equivalent of college basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. You think of a small independent school who doesn't get those conference games to go out and prove themselves every year. Notre Dame has definitely been a team in college football that will play anybody, anywhere, that type of mentality. And they know it's because they've got to bolster their schedule up. So it's a great comparison. We had made the Alabama comparison, was really discussing the comparison that ESPN had made. And so, this is now the second one we've seen, and you and I are definitely in agreement. It is a much better comparison to what the program's done. And for both schools, people continually think, okay, this is the year they fall off. This is the year where we don't have to hear about them. And every year they're right there. And it's really props to both programs, building their programs the right way. And I think what they both do that just makes the world a difference. I'm going to say it's beating a dead horse, but it's just finding players that hold the same values as the program. And that's exactly why both these teams are where they're at, and why Gonzaga, as Monson said, it looks like there is no ceiling.
I think the big difference in comparisons is when ESPN made it on their broadcast, they were talking about this year's Gonzaga team versus this year's Alabama team, and mainly offense. And the comparison Sports Illustrated made was the program.
Fair.
Notre Dame football is a establishment, right?
Yeah.
Love them, hate them. And, I tell you, the people who hate them, they hate them because they're SEC people. They're Big Ten people. And Notre Dame doesn't make sense. In their mind, like, they don't do it the way everyone else has. And Mark Few, Gonzaga have not done this the way traditional basketball powerhouses have done it. So get ready, Zag fans, because I can promise you that as they continue to have success, you're going to become the Notre Dame of college basketball, and there is a lot of hate that comes with the love. That the days of being the lovable Cinderella are gone.
Absolutely.
Two other tidbits I want to get to really quickly that I thought were very good in this was how Morrison has now, you said it before we came on air, there's guys on this team who were 3 years old when Morrison was balling out for the Zags.
Crazy.
And I guess there was a moment where they had recruits, and I don't know, it'd be interesting to know who that was. That there were recruits that were in that I guess just thought Morrison was, that's the radio guy. And Killian Tilly had to say, his jersey's in the rafters, right?
Yeah.
And it's just strange as a Zags fan to think that's how long ago that was.
Yeah.
As you said off air, it feels like it was just yesterday.
It really does.
The other thing that came out of this article that I thought was super interesting was a quote, who knows how in context it was, by Mark Few on Joel Ayayi. And we all, when Ayayi came to Gonzaga at the age of 16, he was a skinny, athletic kid out of France, and I don't think anyone really expected him to blossom into the player he's become.
Sure.
But they went as far in the article to say that Few didn't think that Ayayi would be able to play for him.
Yeah.
And so obviously that goes to show you that I bet you Tommy Lloyd's sitting there right now going, I told you.
Yeah.
I told you he was going to be good.
Absolutely.
And, I think that goes a little bit just to say how much trust Few has in his coaching staff. Go
Sure.
back to that whole training regiment and the development of these players. But I thought that was an interesting point that, Few obviously feels comfortable putting out there now just to show how far his game has come.
Definitely. And if you're a Zag fan, I mean, any of us know the work ethic that Ayai has shown throughout his time here. And Jalen Suggs in this article calls Ayai the motor of this team. And I mean, I think we all agree with that. He does everything. He, of course, recorded the first program triple-double in history. And he just fills the stat sheet. He finds ways to contribute. And when he goes, this team goes. So I love that quote from Suggs as well. And it does definitely show just the trust in this coaching staff. I mean, Tommy Lloyd is Mr. International. Anybody in college basketball
Mr. Worldwide
will agree with that. He is just the best at that. And it's pretty rare that we see him miss on anybody. And you know what? For a guy who's considered to be a coach in waiting, you love to see it because he's a huge part of this program.
Well, in the article, they talk about the 3 phases. Phase 1 being growth. That's the Cinderella phase. Phase 2 being where, the Duke, North Carolina, getting to that level doesn't really seem like it's possible. And we are definitely in phase 3, which we hit, I think, once that national championship year happened. And that is title or bust.